When the right people come together at the right moment, when they care almost as much about winning as they do about each other, they can become the best of the best.
Welcome to the best soccer show, the best soccer show in the whole world.
Here we go. It's the best soccer show. Jason Davis alongside Robert Kerr sitting in for Mr. Jawad. Jawad? I don't know what just happened there. I can't say R's anymore. I'm a child. I lost my two front teeth. I can't say Jared. I said Jawad. Honestly, I have no idea what just happened.
You're dadding it up. You're adopting the young children's lingo in more ways.
Yeah, you
than
know what?
Want.
This is me trying to connect with Gen Z. Jawad isn't here, so Wabbit is here. Wabbit is here with us.
I'm very happy to join you this evening.
Okay, we can't keep that up. That is terrible. That is terrible. All right, so before we get into the business that we need to get into on this show, which includes talking about American performances abroad, talking MLS Cup playoffs, which have just gotten very, very interesting, and really begin in earnest tomorrow, before we talk about the news that The Athletic and Paul Tenorio dropped on us, that we could be watching soccer at a very different time of year in these United States of America in a couple of years' time, let me tell you why Robert's here, besides that Jared's not available, and then what we're doing together that you definitely need to go and support. So Robert is my co-host, the lead host on a brand new thing that we're doing called Morning Kick Around. It's not called Soccer something. It's called Morning Kick Around. That's the name of the show. This is why I let you host on the other thing, Robert, because sometimes I just get tired.
Our show that we do 3 times a week for the last 4 or 5 weeks is definitely called Morning Kick Around.
It's definitely called Morning Kick Around. Robert knows the actual name of the show. So we're asking you here on the Best Soccer Show to go check out Morning Kick Around. Some of you will know that on the YouTube channel for Best Soccer Show, we've streamed some live episodes of Morning Kick Around. It happens every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. We do a good solid hour of covering the beautiful game around the world. What do we say, Robert, over on Morning Kick Around?
The world's favorite game being covered from the world's favorite country.
Something like that. Everyone's favorite game from everyone's favorite country. We're refining this. It's a work in progress, is I think what that is. Yeah. So Robert is here to fill in for Jared, who is unavailable tonight, and to help me promote Morning Kick Around. We're actually doing pretty good over there in the early stages. I mean, followers are what they are. I think we're very close. You know what? Probably in the next couple minutes, if a couple people watching this show right now, some of our besties who are around all the time, go and subscribe to Morning Kick Around. Just search it up, Morning Kick Around on YouTube. You'll find it. It's got a rooster and a ball. It says Morning Kick Around. If you subscribe, we will hit 300 subscribers tonight, right? See, you can hear it right there. That's a little intro video that I didn't mean to play at all on the air on this show. Robert, go ahead.
And as I look at YouTube right now, we are on $2.99 on Morning Kick Around. So the very next subscriber will be the 300th, the milestone guy.
There you go.
We'll see where it is at the end of this program if we're starting off at
Who will it be? Who will be the 300th customer instead of the millionth customer? Who's the 300th? Now, obviously, it just started, Morning Kick Around, and we're pushing it. So please go support that. If you remember Soccer Morning, it's Soccer Morning vibes only. I've got a co-host. I got somebody who sets things up so we can get into the nitty-gritty of world football, world soccer. So that business done. Robert, what shall we talk about this evening? Shall we get into, I don't know, Americans' performances abroad? Is there anybody that we should talk about besides who is clearly the best player that is out there from the United States men's national team right now, Christian Pulisic? Is there anybody else we're talking about, or is it just this Christian Pulisic show right now?
Well, I got to think that it is a bit of the Christian Pulisic show to a degree. I mean, he's hitting milestones and he's in form. Like maybe to an unprecedented level. There were 5 Americans that scored in various competitions midweek, so a positive week in that sense. But I think the lead story is the awesomeness of one Christian Pulisic.
He didn't mean it, right? We know he didn't mean it. He said so in Italian after the game, that he was trying to cross it like he does every other corner kick. and it just so happened to find the net and get Milan on their way to a victory in the Champions, which they definitely needed. They desperately needed. In fact, there was a little bit of controversy, Robert. Did you catch the controversy with the broadcaster, with the guy who called the game between Milan
No.
and Bruges?
What
He said something like he needed that. After Pulisic scores the Olympico, he said he needed that. And American soccer fans went apoplectic. They went like exploded. What do you mean he needed that?
Don't
This
you
is a
know we're
man
excited about this?
on fire right now. The best form of his career. He's finally enjoying his football. What are you talking about? And I heard this through the grapevine secondhand. I don't know if it's true. That broadcaster then subsequently didn't apologize. He subsequently explained what he meant was the team, Milan, needed that because of their Champions League campaign to this point. And therefore, instead of saying they needed that, he said he misspoke. I don't know. But Christian Pulisic again on the goal sheet in the most absurd way. But hey, I'm not going to hate it. Like when the soccer gods shine upon you, you accept all of that light.
Well, you know, those broadcasters are pretty good at talking themselves out of a hole. Maybe he did mean but he wasn't up on the hot streak that Christian Pulisic is on,
Sure.
and he just wanted
He meant
to
he meant
backtrack out of it. He's a wordsmith. He's a professional commentator.
He meant the royal he. That's what the royal he. Is that a thing? Did I make that up? That's not a thing. Definitely not. I mean,
If
look,
you're a wordsmith, you can get away with it.
again, this is a thing. I guess he did correct himself in the game. I only saw the moment. I did hear him say he needed that. I wasn't paying attention to what other words came out of the man's mouth. He did a fine job. He was calling a Champions League soccer match solo on the world feed, which is a weird thing. We don't often hear. I guess that kind of indicates where Milan is in the pecking order right now. Like they didn't even bother assigning two broadcasters. They were like, yeah, just one guy's completely fine right now. Who knows? I will say that, if we're talking about that game, that was a questionable red card. I'm not so sure about that red card, but it was interesting to see. And I know there's been a little bit of back and forth on this too, right? That Pulisic, I think he played pretty close to 90 minutes. He may have been pulled late in the game. I can't remember. Rafael Leao was pulled pretty early by Paulo Fonseca. He was okay. Like he did things. He was dangerous in the way that Leao was always dangerous. But he gets pulled out. He gets substituted for Chukwueze, who sets up the two goals that really put Milan over the top from Reinders. So does that indicate something about Leao and where he fits? And maybe not, because they do have a congested fixture list just like everybody else. But I thought that was interesting. And I'll say, I think it was on one of our videos over at Morning Kick Around when we talked about Pulisic, when we talked about his form, we talked about the Olympico and that game. Somebody said, imagine if Christian Pulisic had a world-class fullback behind him the way that Rafael Leao does on the left side with Teo Hernandez. Like, imagine if that was flip-flopped or Pulisic had that much help. He wouldn't have to, because Leao is great going forward, but what he doesn't bring to the table as well as Pulisic does is the ability to defend, track back, press, counter press, do things that Fonseca, as a modern football manager, really wants his attackers to do.
I mean, who would be that player that's kind of in that bracket that AC Milan could realistically add?
Well, that's the thing. You say realistically, they're not adding a player of that caliber. Not at this moment. Right. And like it's a credit to Pulisic that it doesn't make a difference for how he has affected that team on both sides of the ball. But clearly he's paid to score goals and set up goals, and he's done that. Right. He's doing the work he needs to do to be there sort of at the top of the list for Milan every time Fonseca puts down a team sheet. Right. You and I were talking about this too. And I'll bring this question to the Best Soccer Show audience. Is Christian Pulisic too good for AC Milan?
I said that a little bit in jest, to poke the bear, so to speak, but I don't think that's out of line because we want Pulisic to be competing for trophies and championships. I mean, them winning midweek is encouraging that they're not going to flunk out of the Champions League, and they're not exactly at the top of the Italian league. So American fans might think he is if he continues his form, but him being like the number one guy on AC Milan is a huge achievement in its own right.
Yeah, I'm trying not to look a gift soccer players form into the mouth. I'm not trying to do that. This is the one thing that we came to.
He's healthy. He found form.
He's healthy. He likes it. He's finding form. He's scoring goals. How productive is it to sit and go, let's move him on? Hey, hopefully somebody comes and spends 80 million on him and he plays at a bigger club where, look, Milan, there is pressure. No doubt there's pressure at AC Milan, but it's a different pressure than he would have if he was at Real Madrid, if he was at Barcelona, if he was at Bayern Munich, if he was at one of the top 3 teams in England right now, right? Mm-hmm. That's a different kind of pressure. And so this is the place we are as Americans, right? And I'll throw up Mike Thomas. My man, Mike Thomas, of course, this is the best soccer show, which means he gets his drop played. Let me go ahead and do that.
Michael freaking Arasco Fiscal.
That's my man, Phil and Miketon is his actual name around here. Don't get greedy. Milan is plenty fine. Man, that feels a little defeatist. I mean, I agree with it, but it feels a little defeatist to say that, right? That let's not get greedy. Let's just accept that Pulisic needs to be at a club like Milan, Robert, to thrive. Oh, looks like maybe Robert has frozen on me. And I'm all by myself. Oh no. Hopefully there you are. You froze on me, Robert. Are you with us? Okay.
It's a blackout out here, okay. But to your point, am I back? Am I not? What's going on?
I think you're back. Go ahead. Tell me.
Oh, I was going to say it's great to draw the connection between Mike Thomas. He's been so great commenting on Morning Kick Around, and I've listened to this show and I've heard that drop 10,000 times. So I'm just now putting that connection. So very cool to have worlds collide there.
Okay, yeah. So we're all in agreement, right? American soccer fans. Pulisic is fine at Milan. We don't need him to go somewhere bigger or better right now. I mean, if he does this for a season or two, then that interest will generate itself, and then he'll have to make a choice because there may be somebody who comes in for him.
I'm secretly hoping that Christian Pulisic has a Salah sort of trajectory where he, came up at a continental team, went to Chelsea, had some flashes, didn't go perfect, went to Italy, and then, maybe a season or two of being the man might set him up to get that big move, but be that big move guy by the time that comes.
I'll say this from a psychological standpoint. I don't need Christian Pulisic to play at a bigger club. Milan's a massive club, don't get me wrong, but a club that is challenging for Champions League titles to validate me as a soccer fan. Like, I don't need him to do that so that I can feel better as an American soccer fan. But I think there is some of that at work here, right? Because he is the guy right now, and because he has proven that he can perform at a very high level for a big club. And we also feel validated. We also feel justified in our anger over what happened to Chelsea with him, right, Robert? Like, this is like, oh, see, look what you did, Chelsea. Look what you could have had, except you didn't know how to make him happy, how to manage him, how to give him the right and proper support.
When Pulisic, when it was first announced, when he had the big money move to Chelsea, I was excited for an American to get that big move, but Chelsea just seemed like the wrong choice altogether. It always did. I mean, they just churn through players. That is just a conveyor belt of talented young players just come in and out of there. And if they have 25 top players and you're slightly hurt, I almost think that American fans were maybe a little too harsh on the decision-making and the inclusion or non-inclusion of Pulisic. They have their players that were already, healthy and fit ahead of them.
Okay. Just a little bit of a skip on that one, Robert. I know somebody's trying to interrupt your signal from Michigan. All right, let's talk about some other Americans. I mean, we just have to sort of note performances. Weston McKennie, who was not fit enough to play for the U.S. men's national team in games against Panama and Mexico, went straight back into the starting lineup for Juve in their Champions League game, Robert. That didn't end well for Juventus, and I don't know how you sort of contextualize that game, and we are talking about a new Champions League format, so like whether or not you should worry about Juve in the Champions League. But if I'm only being selfish as an American fan, I don't think he played that well. I think he was substituted in the 55th minute, something like that. I don't know that he played all that well. I think they were struggling to find attacking opportunities for Thiago Motta. But at least, again, he's healthy, he's fit, he's in the starting lineup for Juve. That says something about Weston McKennie.
I mean, just to even hold down that spot and be in the regular squad. I mean, we're talking about levels here, right? Achievement levels. You know, you got to get into the squad, be a squad regular, and then be an achiever and then a difference maker. And at times he's kind of bouncing in between squad member, and at times he is an important player. Do you think that McKennie has to leave to become, you know, the guy, the number one guy?
But this is an argument that comes up sometimes, or a debate with the U.S. men's national team, that part of the problem during the beginning of that second cycle under Berhalter. I mean, you could certainly argue about the World Cup in 2022 and that this being a problem as well, even though it's a young group across the board and it's kind of hard to get greedy, that there wasn't anybody in that team who was the central figure at their club. Who was carrying the weight of their club. Even if you say, well, Donovan and Dempsey and some of these guys weren't as good, or they weren't playing at clubs as large as Juve or Milan or whatever, they were still the man at the Galaxy, or Clint, to a lesser extent with Fulham, but clearly in Seattle. Like they were the players who the team centered around, and they had a lot of pressure on themselves to perform. And this team lacked some of that. Now, I think Pulisic has matured into that or grown into that at Milan. Like, yes, Leao is still kind of the more highly sought after player, I think, because of Pulisic's recent history. But you can definitely argue that Christian Pulisic is Milan's best player, and he's carrying their load for them right now. Weston McKennie's not that player, and he probably won't be because of the kind of player he is, Robert. So I don't know that there's a better place for him than Juventus. Like, I would rather him play the way he's playing at Juventus under Thiago Motta, an up-and-coming manager at a big club, than go back to Germany maybe and play mid-table, but sort of be the man.
I mean, we were all pretty surprised when that Schalke to Juve move happened, right? I mean,
yeah, we were all like, wait, what? What happened?
That he seemed like he skipped a couple steps on the way, and maybe we thought that could be his eventual level, but never really thought, a squad midfielder from struggling German team would, make the leap to, Italian royalty. But he somehow hung along. It seems like he's kind of been on the bottom of Juve's boot, and they've tried to scrape him off, and he's just, tough enough to stick on the bottom there and with a smile somehow. I don't know.
There aren't a lot of good analogies for what Weston McKennie has managed to do, like gum stuck to your boot, or maybe a certain thing it's really difficult to kill that you might call a pest. Like, I don't call Weston McKennie a pest, but and it's not even that. He's not a pest, right? He's managed to make himself valuable. And even when it seemed like maybe they didn't think he was, suddenly there he is. And look, that is obviously a credit to McKennie.
It reminds me of what Jurgen Klopp said about his playing days, that he was able to hang around like a bad smell and have a decent professional career as a player. And maybe that could be the same with Juventus. Not saying anything about him. If he's putting ranch on his pizza, maybe gets a little stinky on there.
Yeah, that's a thing. Like, I don't know. So Weston McKennie plays in the Champions League, but Juve falls to Stuttgart in that one. Not a good day for Juventus.
Remarkable for Stuttgart. People forget that they are not a big name historically in Germany.
Not at all. Good stuff for them. Also in the Champions League, Austin Trusty starting at center back for Celtic. They went to Italy, to Atalanta, to Bergamo, and they got a goalless draw, which is that something to write home about for Celtic? I don't know. I mean, again, they got crushed, absolutely destroyed by Dortmund in this competition. So anything better than that is progress, I suppose, for Brendan Rodgers. And again, to see, I didn't love the move, Robert, Austin Trusty leaving to go to Celtic, but if he's going to play, at least it's in the Champions League.
Yeah, that's the shining light. The confidence boosted, lots of wins in your domestic league, and you have like the kind of ray of light, maybe outside chance to get a result in the Champions League. You appear in the Champions League, you can put that on your resume, and those are memories you'll have forever. But oftentimes for Celtic in the Champions League, those memories can turn into nightmares to a degree. If they come across teams that are, of the higher standard, it can get ugly for Celtic in those competitions. Yeah. I remember a Celtic versus Barcelona. I mean, granted, Celtic did get that famous 1-0 win, But I do remember like a 7-2 and some score lines kind of like that. Some football scores when Celtic run into the big boys sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That again, that's a team that is always going to be outgunned against clubs from the top 5 leagues of Europe. They can usually hold their own against some of the second and third tier teams of Europe, but it's when you see them in those moments where it is always dicey. Also, PSV went to Paris and got a draw. It's a really good draw for PSV. I mean, again, it's too early in the Champions League for me to know if that's going to help them get into the round of 16. Robert,
PSV
but
PSG is one of my favorite all-time naming matchups. I remember when I was a little kid, just me and my dad laughing at that. So PSG versus PSV. And at that time, PSG was lousy and PSV was a powerhouse. So it's like, which one of the PS is the power player? But right now, would you say it's probably favor PSG now?
Oh, it favors even without
money.
Mbappe, even with the step back they've taken, still.
Are we
Malik
really worried
Tillman?
about Pepe even more so than we already were?
No, I don't think, again, I'm worried, period. As long as De Jong is there, I'm worried, period, because he's just not going to play a ton. But he's always been more likely to get league minutes in relief of De Jong than Champions League minutes. And again, they were 1-1 in that game. They were actually up in that game at halftime. And then that kind of terrible goal. I mean, it's a good shot by Hakimi. He puts a goalkeeper under pressure, but that should be saved. So you could argue PSV Eindhoven should have gotten out of there with 3 points because PSG wasn't otherwise all that dangerous. And if that's the thinking for Peter Bosz, I can understand leaving De Jong, the more experienced player, on the field. Malik Tillman went 90 minutes in that game and played okay. Again, nothing sort of incredible on the attacking end of the field. It's more about controlling the game when you're going up against the talent that PSG can bring to the table. And Richie Ledesma came off the bench. And again, he's been used as a fullback these days. I don't know that anybody has Ledesma in their depth chart for the U.S. men's national team right now. But again, I'm going to be encouraged by him at least getting on the field sometimes.
You like to see Americans get playing time regardless. But yeah, I'll be honest, both those last 2 players you referenced, Ledesma and Tillman, I haven't seen a lot of them myself, so I don't really know what they bring. Like, what is the standout quality for Tillman and Ledesma?
I mean, he can be a creative player. He can unlock a defense. He does it in Holland on a semi-regular basis. Like, I think he's a pretty good player. He's above average at that position in the league he plays in, but it does not show up when he plays for the U.S. men's national team as a general rule. And it does not show up all that often when they're up a level like this against a PSG in the Champions League. We just haven't seen enough to imagine that Malik Tillman has some sort of progression beyond what he's already achieved with with PSV Eindhoven and the U.S. men's national team. And I know recently he was talking about how, it was Bayern's choice not to bring him back home, and ultimately PSV Eindhoven decided to execute their purchase clause on his loan. I think, if he was the player we want him to be, then Bayern Munich would have brought him back and at least given him a chance to see what he could do. I mean, I know that that's a loaded squad, clearly, and there's not an obvious place for him in that team, but, he is a very fine Eredivisie player, and that's about all he is at the moment.
You got some skills, got some quality, shows something a little bit, maybe does well against maybe some lighter defense, but getting to those higher levels, he hasn't quite proved himself to be a power player just yet.
That's a fair way of describing it. Yeah, that's a fair way of describing it. All right, so American contributions in the Champions League, a little bit of a mixed bag, but there's the Christian Pulisic goal. He continues that incredible form. We'll see if he can continue with that back into the league campaign. Let's talk about the league here, Robert. Major League Soccer playoff season is upon us. You got bracket fever, right? Have you checked your temperature rate lately? How's your bracket fever?
It is a bit high. I might need to take some medicine to cool it on off. But I want to say here, there was the wild card games midweek. I don't think that Portland deserve a participation trophy for
Not
their
even a
performance.
participation trophy. Like what? Like do you get like egged or something? Like should you be summarily embarrassed? Should you be put in some sort of embarrassing situation? Like I'm not talking about physical pain or anything, but just like should you have to walk through the streets, letting people throw rotten tomatoes at you or something if you play that badly at home in a playoff game?
Something like that. I bet the Portland home fans probably gave them some lip service within the stadium. Whether I don't know the passion, does the passion in Portland spill out into the streets? Is it that kind of level?
I mean, they are a soccer town and players get recognized. I don't know how that's going to go in the aftermath of that game. And obviously everybody watching this knows Portland got skunked 5-0
Shellac.
by Vancouver in their own building, even though they weren't supposed to host that game. So they got
Yeah.
again, Bill Neville before the game said the God must be a Timbers fan. And then because that game got moved to Portland because there was motocross at BC Place in Vancouver. I didn't know the Canadians were so crazy for bikes going over dirt hills, Robert, but there you are. And then what did Vancouver do? They just embarrassed Portland on their home patch. And, you can read a lot into a game like that when it goes so poorly for a team. If you didn't know about what Evander said after the game, if you didn't hear those stories, you may not catch anything. But I have heard people say, well, I could see that there was something wrong internally with the culture of that team based on how they played in that game. They looked like they did not want to make the effort necessary to show up defensively in particular and lethargic on the attacking end. I mean, Ryan Gold had himself a day, a bonny time, or whatever the Scots might say. I know you're half English. You can tell me, what would the Scots say about Ryan Gold's performance? Do you have any words?
I don't know the Scottish slang too much, but he had a bonny face. I sure can say something like that. But I
You
wanted
don't have
to
a
say,
Braveheart? You don't have a Braveheart for me? You can't even do a William Wallace for me? Come on.
they can take our home field advantage, but they can't take the win.
That's exactly that's pretty good. I mean, you didn't do the accent, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we learned on the morning kick around that accents and me don't really go together. I can do like a Southern American one and maybe bust out a couple different kinds of English ones, but definitely not an accentman by profession. But
Okay.
I wanted to say that the Portland defensive performance, especially in the second half, is what I look like after an hour of pickup soccer. And it's like, oh, that ball rolled by me. Like
That's an approach.
the gentle jog back as they score on my goal. And like just kind of like,
yeah.
oh shucks, they did it again.
Yeah. Obviously, that was not Portland's day. I feel a little bit for Phil Neville. He doesn't need my sympathy, that Phil Neville, but I think he's said some very good things, and he did have a team that did some nice things this season. I mean, certainly scoring goals, playing attacking football, but that defensive problem really showed up in that game last night. And Evander, this is what I was talking about, Robert. If you didn't know what Evander said on social media or what Tom Bogert reported, you might not have picked up on anything culture-wise or something rotten in the locker room with the Portland Timbers last night. But Evander went on a 5-post rant over there on Elon's website and basically said the fans deserve better than the people in charge of this club. He said they're not men. They're not true to their word, that kind of thing. Now, however, it's worth pointing out that Evander is in the midst of a contract battle with the Portland Timbers, right? He had an incredible year, thinks he deserves a raise. The Timbers gave him an offer. He said, I want that to start right now in August. And they were like, no, we want it to start next year. He said, I want a 15 million pound or 50 million. I'm sorry, I'm in English mode. $15 million release clause. They said, no, we're not going to give you a record contract with the $15 million release clause. So he's in this thing, and maybe that has something to do with it. But there have been other issues in the past. Reportedly, Evander told Ned Grabavoy, the team's general manager, in the locker room after the game that it was his fault that they lost 5-0 at home to the Vancouver Whitecaps. So again, like, how much of this is Phil's fault? How much of it is something deeper? How much of this is upper management? How much of this is Merritt Paulson? How much of this is whatever? And then what happens because of this story is we completely ignore what the Vancouver Whitecaps did, or we gloss over it. Yeah, the Whitecaps had a nice day. Ryan Gold had a bunny time, but it's about the Timbers collapsing more than it is about Vancouver thriving in that moment. Vinny Sartini, by the way, Robert, after Phil Neville said must be a Timbers fan, Vinny Sartini said, I don't know. He said something like, God doesn't exist for me. That's what he said. So you're like, oh, whatever. No God. We'll just take care of business here. But it means Portland LAFC in the MLS Cup playoffs.
Before we move on to that matchup, I got to say, I do love Neville eating their words. I mean, the face on his brother when he was on that famous picture of him on the bus in Spain. And then Gary Neville getting run out of Miami once all the stars show up. I mean, what international star player could get signed by Portland to see him out the door?
Wow, that's a good
one. Like Paul Pogba to MLS's Portland Timbers, but have to get rid of Gary Neville first.
The odds on Paul Pogba to Portland, they've got to be like 50,000 to 1. Like,
well, who would be who's the next global superstar coming to MLS?
Who's the next global superstar to come to Major League Soccer? I don't like that game because I think it's sort of conditional, and I don't even know how you define global superstar.
It's just this is just a conduit to egg on the face of Gary Neville.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Yeah, if we revamp the Portland Timbers with a bunch of global names, Phil Neville gets fired because that's what happened. That's what happens in his career. That's how it goes for him. Yeah. So the Timbers out, Vancouver through. That means Vancouver will get LAFC in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs in the Western Conference. Let's go back to Tuesday, right? Okay. Let's go back to Tuesday because I definitely don't want to gloss over. Atlanta United survives on penalty kicks against CF Montreal. That game played out in a very weird way where Atlanta scored 2 good goals, but weren't necessarily the team setting the tempo, which I think they're mostly fine with. Then they give up 2 pretty ugly goals. One of them an absolute howler by Brad Guzan, which gifted Joseph Martinez, ex-Atlanta United striker and hero, a goal. And then the guy who had scored Atlanta's first goal, Brooks Lennon, makes a mistake and steps on a Vancouver player in the box, Montreal gifts Montreal a penalty kick, which Joseph Martinez then scores, yells at Brad Guzan, yells some choice 4-letter words, I guess. Robert, were you watching that? Did you see some of that go down?
Yeah, he was pretty fired up on that. We would have liked to see more. I even saw on the MLS account, they kind of replayed that event and kind of tried to play into that. And they went very quickly from the cut from the angry Joseph Martinez face to maybe an overly embellished hug and makeup session at the end. Guzan was not letting him go. He was insistent on the makeup hug at the end.
I think it was 2 guys who were in the heat of battle and their emotions. And I think they probably have trash talked each other a ton.
How many times did they do that in practice? Yeah.
A lot. Right. A lot. I mean, I think I read that one of their first interactions was a clattering in a training session when Guzan refused to let Martinez get on the end of something in the box, right? Comes off his line, clatters into Martinez. And then the telling of the story that won Joseph Martinez's eternal respect for Brad Guzan, and they've been friends ever since. Which is a little bit too pat of a story, like something you tell your 5-year-old, but still, I appreciate it. And then they obviously had that moment on the field in Montreal. Joseph Martinez is the kind of guy that, while he loves Atlanta, would happily put the sword to Atlanta to keep them out of the playoffs and get a chance to go play against another of his old teams and Inter Miami. So, and then we get to the penalty kick shootout. Obviously, Martinez scored his. Guzan makes 1 save, and that's enough to put Atlanta into the first round against Miami coming up tomorrow night. Are you hyped up for that?
Yeah, I'm pretty hyped up. I mean, it's hyped up as a first game in a best of 3-game series in soccer as you can be. I mean, is it just purely based on results, or is there any kind of aggregate here, or is it win a game?
No, it's best of 3, game? Robert. Best of 3
Baseball
after
style?
90 minutes, straight to penalties, just like that wild card game. So you could go 0-0. You could score no goals and advance to the next round of the playoffs because you can win and you can keep clean sheets, score no goals, win in a penalty kick shootout. You could obviously lose one of those games horribly And then still, as long as you get to penalties and win those games on penalties, you could effectively advance without winning a single game in regulation.
I think you're giving coaches some bad ideas for the neutrals out there.
Oh, they need me to give them bad ideas.
Don't give them bad ideas. They're like, you know
they
what?
need
Yeah, that is right.
me
Let's
to do
this is yeah, thanks. I hate it. That's right, Mike. And just like drag it out. Cause I mean, I remember there was some years in the Champions League where that was the tactic, like literally just kill a whole game off and then play a real game in the second leg.
Right. And this is with like, oh, away goals will fix it. And then away goals didn't fix it. And then let's do a away with away goals. And you're like, okay, I guess this is better. I'm not positive it's better. I don't know. This, again, the best of 3 thing is still weird. I still don't love it. I know it's about putting more games on Apple TV. I kind of also am happy we're getting more games. Like I'm enough of an American sports fan, Robert. I'm a massive American sports fan, but I'm bringing enough of my Americanness to the table to be like, all right, let's see what happens. Win game 1 doesn't, you have to go win a second game. Like if Atlanta wins in Fort Lauderdale tomorrow, Miami has to win 2 games, one of them in Atlanta. Like that puts incredible pressure and creates massive drama for those 2 games. It's particularly if they win the second one and we go to a third game back in Fort Lauderdale. Like that's if you're a neutral or an MLS executive or somebody who runs Apple TV, that's what you want. You want all 3 games.
That's an excellent point because, during the MLS regular season, this is the first time we've seen, because they didn't make the playoffs last year. This is the first time we've seen Inter Miami in the MLS Cup playoffs. And except for a couple times in the lead in the Leagues Cup, they really haven't been backs to the wall, must win situations. Obviously, they, broke the points record in the regular season, and within themselves, they were competitive enough to, step on the gas when they were trailing or tied in games late, and they felt that pressure themselves. But to actually see them on the brink of possible elimination is an exciting prospect. That would raise my bracket temperature, I think.
The worst case scenario, again, for MLS, for the Apple executives, for people involved in selling the game in this country, and you and I have broached this as well on Morning Kick Around. Go subscribe to Morning Kick Around. It's a great show. What happens?
Now that we're halfway, I'm going to look to see where we're at in the numbers there.
What happens if we're still at 300? What happens if Lionel Messi gets bounced from the playoffs in the very first round he plays in? What happens then?
Ooh. What happens then? He gets his friends, he packs them all up, and he leaves.
Oh, really? That's what he does? Like he says, I'm out. Fort Lauderdale's not for me. Miami's not for me. I'm piecing to Buenos Aires or something. Like what do you think that is?
That's a bit of a jokey answer. In reality, I almost think that would guarantee him returning, to be honest. I don't think he would want to go out on that. If his body is able to even, complete another full season. I think
it's not even about that. It's about the lost momentum for MLS going into this playoff season. And
MLS would put all of their eggs in the redemption story. Then they would immediately be like, their off season brewing to overcome the big disappointment. It's going to be the biggest season ever in 2025 when they kind of make up for their early shock exit.
Cut to a montage of Lionel Messi in the weight room on the training ground, talking about how he has to get back to the MLS Cup playoffs because that's the one trophy he doesn't have in his trophy case.
I can see a slow dissolve of him, like kind of slumped over. When he's upset, he's going like this. Slow dissolve over that. Man. It's like over the bitter disappointment of losing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Let's take a quick poll then from everybody watching live right now. And if you watch this after the fact, definitely leave a comment, whatever. How many people think Atlanta United can beat Inter Miami? Legitimately think Atlanta United can beat Inter Miami over 3 games in these playoffs? Because I'm curious about that. You look at these brackets, Robert. You look at the teams that are atop the conference tables on both sides. Inter Miami, Columbus Crew, LAFC, LA Galaxy. And what I see is a gap between the top 2 teams in each conference and everybody else. Now, it doesn't mean Cincinnati can't beat Columbus or Miami for that matter, if it comes down to it. It doesn't mean that, I don't know, on their best day, Seattle, RSL, whoever can't spring something out west. It just feels like they are a clear step behind those other teams. and makes it easy to look at that bracket and go chalk, 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 chalk. Top 4 seeds, number 1, number 2, number 2, conference finals. And obviously it's a little bit more of a crapshoot once you get there. Like, it's a little bit more of a question. Inter Miami Columbus would be massive in Fort Lauderdale. LAFC Galaxy would be massive in Los Angeles. So I know there's always this thing about MLS can throw up a surprise, and this league allows for an 8 seed to win the whole thing. I just cannot see it this year.
Yeah, the spread of points from first to last was like 56 points across the league. Granted, more teams, more possibility for that sort of spread, but it is stark that there was definitely a pretty clear tiering in the overall table, and those 4 do stand out, 2 on each side. Cincinnati a little bit closer than Salt Lake in the West to be that third team.
Sure,
but of
based on
those
history.
those 4 front runners, which one of those is most likely to, or most vulnerable to have a slip up?
I mean, I think if you ask me where my confidence lies, I would say that I'm most confident in Miami, and Columbus would be a very close number 2.
I think
the
fatigue
East,
is probably the thing with Columbus.
perhaps, but I think they know how to do this, right? And I think Wilfred Nancy is an incredible in-game coach. And I think that's going to come to the fore here. So I would say Miami a tick above, just a tiny bit, a tick above Columbus. And then the 2 Western teams kind of get lumped together. Like, I would say LAFC is ahead of the Galaxy because of their history in these kind of competitions, in tournaments, and obviously, winning an MLS Cup and making an MLS Cup final last season, because the Galaxy just haven't been here for a while. And I think the Galaxy are very good, but I wonder if that is going to show up, particularly if they have to go across town and play LAFC in their building with a chance to advance to MLS Cup final on the line. We don't know exactly how everything's going to play out, but that could be for hosting rights. We don't know. I mean, I have to look at the combined table. Obviously, Inter Miami is the number 1 overall seed. And so for them, it's a matter, if they go all the way, they're going to host the final, no question. But we've had years where it's been a surprise who ended up hosting the final because we didn't expect that team to come out of that conference. So it looks like, okay, Miami, Columbus, LAFC, and Galaxy are on. Then they tied, but LAFC came out a little bit ahead because of the goal difference, right? So, yeah, it would be like if Columbus and Miami come out of the East, then neither one of the LA teams can host the final. But who knows? Maybe an upset gives them that opportunity.
So I think maybe the coaching, I liked your point about Wilfred Nancy being really good in-game strategist and making adjustments, and he's just been, has had the magic touch so far in his time in MLS. Tata Martino has the second team now in MLS that he has pushed all the right buttons to get the stars performing at their top level, to get the role players performing at a higher level. Is the same thing true with the coaching in the Western Conference with the 2 LA teams?
Well, look, Greg Vanney's an MLS Cup champion. Steve Trundle's an MLS Cup champion.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you doubt their ability to manage these games and manage these tournaments? But again, it's a matter of whether or not they have the team to do it. I mean, but the margins are fine. It's still Major League Soccer and it's still tournament football. So it could be one thing changes that game. If it does come down to a Western Conference final featuring the LA teams, it could be there's a right substitution at the right time that turns everything on his head. Maybe Carlos Vela finally it comes out of the mist and for one last moment saves LAFC against the guy. We don't know. We don't know about that fact, but I don't doubt all 4 coaches in the terms of the top 4 teams. And again, I'm not trying to look past Cincinnati. I'm not trying to look past RSL. We're just talking about what looks like the most likely thing to happen. All 4 of those coaches are MLS Cup champions. I can't remember if we've ever had that kind of scenario. Right? We'd have to go back and look at history to even think of to see if that's even something that's ever happened. And if they all make their conference final, that may be a first. All 4 of them have MLS Cup trophies on their resume. That would be pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's pretty unreal. I didn't even think about it in those terms. I knew that the coaching quality definitely seemed to be up with the teams that we're referencing. Those top 4, they all have great qualities. I guess I didn't fully appreciate that Nancy. I mean, last year he won Martino with a different team, Vanny and Cherundolo in
Vanny
the
with
West.
Cherundolo with
I want to
LAFC.
say here, if I'm trying to pick something out of these 4 teams, what kind of works against them, would Hugo Lloris's Spursiness maybe be an undoing there? Something.
He's up for goalkeeper of the year, so you be careful about that Spursiness over there, Liverpool fan. No, it could. I mean, I don't think that's the factor here, right? Mistakes made ultimately to determine this thing. I guess that's possible, but I don't know. I mean, I just think that this is lined up. This is what MLS wants. This is lined up for 4 very, very, very good teams to have a shot to sort of play one of the more incredible playoff tournaments in history. And if somebody else steps up and springs an upset, well, then we'll ride that wave and we'll be talking about a Cinderella. And it'll be certainly fascinating to see whichever team does pull an upset, if they can make it last and do more than just, make the next round. Right. So, Robert, as we wrap this up, because I got another big topic I want to get to with you. We look at this. So I'll start in the West. LAFC Vancouver. Any concerns about Vancouver? They have played LAFC tough. They have beaten LAFC in meaningful matches. Any question about LAFC beating Vancouver?
I would say just because they had such a rampaging win, they'll pretty high on confidence. I think that momentum would be the difference maker. I am not 100 fully convinced that LA will be the eventual champions, but I don't think that Vancouver will be the team that will be their undoing.
I think 2 games at home, LAFC should be okay. It might take 3 games though. I think I could see that. Seattle, Houston, that's the 4-5 matchup. I think that could go either way, but Seattle has home field advantage. Houston's, I don't think, ever beaten Seattle in the playoffs in Seattle. I think I have that right. Something like that. There's some stat out there that Houston just doesn't do it against Seattle in Seattle.
Seattle historically are just a funny team. Does their regular season and their postseason always correlate with their results? I feel like some of their best postseason runs were in years where they were,
like
middling.
4th. Yeah, that's a good point. We'll see. I mean, I think Houston has leveled up in a big way. I would still edge Seattle, but it wouldn't be a shock if Houston came out. RSL Minnesota. So I'm taking Seattle, but it's close. RSL Minnesota is interesting. Again, 2 games in Salt Lake, 2 games in Sandy, Utah is a big advantage for RSL in their building. But I like Minnesota United right now. They're one of those teams that actually made some summer signings that have made an impact on their club in a way that's been effective. Not everybody has been able to pull that off. So Kelvin Yeboah has made a difference. Is that going to be something that comes to bear in the playoffs? So, I don't know. What do you think about that one? Because RSL, they're gritty. They know how to grind out a game like this.
I feel like I'd like to see Diego Luna have a special moment. I can't. It's pretty hard to say the winner of that matchup, but I really, just for the sake of how good he's been, I would like to see Luna have just like a moment where he really gets his shine. And I gotta say that matchup's like a great stadium matchup. Both teams with nice venues. Considering what the respective soccer infrastructure across the land, both teams do well. But I would think, just because I haven't seen enough Minnesota to know about the improvements that you're talking about, so I'm going to go with the familiarity and go with RSL here.
All right, and then Galaxy, Colorado. I mean, if the Galaxy trip up against Colorado, they were never meant. I mean, they were not that good to begin with, but I think they are a pretty good team, and I think they'll be okay against the Rapids.
What's with the Rapids getting like goalkeeper heavy? Has Stefan made any difference there since he's been there?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a pretty good season. Yeah, I think it's an upgrade from where they were. They're a better team, but whether or not they're capable of beating the Galaxy, I don't know. But I would take the Galaxy. Let's just move past that one. I think,
I was not too much to dig in there.
Well, not to hit on the Rapids. I mean, I got roots in Denver, but I can't see them coming out. We already talked about Miami, Atlanta. I think Miami is going to be fine. It could take 3 games. Atlanta, I think this year has beaten Miami or not lost to Miami this season. So that gives you some confidence. I don't know whether or not that was pre-summer sales. Orlando, Charlotte. Bit of a coin flip, although I would edge it to Orlando because of home field advantage in that. I mean, keep in mind, last year was the first year of this format, and I think we had one upset. We had Sporting Kansas City beating St. Louis. And again, a lot of people say St. Louis was counterfeit to begin with, but that was veteran experience versus a brand new team. The team that wins game one wins the series, generally speaking. I mean, there's not a ton of history data here, Robert, but if you win game one, you're probably going to be fine. Orlando at home against Charlotte, Cincinnati at home against NYCFC, Columbus Red Bulls, right? I mean, again, it's MLS, could be tight, but I expect the home team to win in all three of those games.
A point on Charlotte, I had kind of a laugh when Charlotte's social media was doing the meme where they make fun of all the writers for predicting that they would come in last place.
I hate that meme. That's a terrible meme.
Yeah, but they came in like what?
Stop doing it.
They came in like 6th place or something like that. I don't know if that was exactly like.
It's not the
like,
I told you so. They acted like it was.
Not quite. I mean, like, good for them for being better than perceived expectations. But I mean, it was that's not it. I don't think it's not. You don't have a polished. That's not it.
Stop it. MLS team. First of all, if you're picking the league's analysts to go after, like, just nobody likes that vibe where it's like the people who work for the league's website are making picks, and then the clubs are later on saying, we did better than you thought we would. Stop it. It's all it feels like Spider-Man meme stuff. Like, stop it today. Stop it right now. Don't do it anymore.
We were a whole 8 positions higher than you thought we were going to be.
Well, 8 is a lot. 8 is a lot of positions. Let's
14th to 6th. I mean, it is an improvement over expectations, but I mean, who's polishing their 6th place trophy?
Nobody, because it doesn't exist. But let's move on. Let's talk about the news that Paul Tenorio dropped at The Athletic, full of Nelson Rodriguez quotes, which I thought was interesting, Robert, that the league's VP of sporting competition and fiddly sticks was quoted. No, sorry.
I always get nervous whenever you see Nelson Rodriguez in a story. I always get a little nervous.
No. He's like the angel of death. Oh no.
He sure is. He kills everything he touches.
Oh, that's so messed up. I mean, yeah, it's not wrong. It's not, you're not wrong. But yeah. So in this story, Paul Tenorio outlines that the league is seriously considering kicking the tires on the idea of switching the calendar to the fall to spring style that most of Europe uses after the 2026 World Cup. You live, Mr. Robert Kerr, in a northern clime. You're a Michigander? Michi, what?
You nailed it. Michigander. It's totally it. You first time you got it. But from the Michigander perspective, what the question is, like, how do you feel about playing through the winter up here?
Yeah. I mean, 5 week. There's a proposed 5-week winter break built in, apparently, to this idea, which is very Bundesliga. So think of it that way.
And I think that you could also get clever with the scheduling, like on the edges of the break too, like those last couple of games for northern climate teams, or maybe the New Yorks or the New Englands are facing the Miamis and the Orlandos. Those last 2 weeks are on the front and the back of that. It was kind of the things that I shake my stick at for, American soccer related, the pro rels, the calendars, the, training payments and all that sort of stuff. The calendar was the one I had kind of like, just kind of saluted and put down the memory hole and thought that was just never going to happen. So when this news came out, I was genuinely surprised. I did not see this coming. I'm for it just to be in harmony with the rest of the, with the majority of the world. And then even domestically, like college, youth, they play, a spring and fall seasons at the other levels. It's just the professional level that plays through the summer. And we can break down all the reasons why, MLS, plays through the summer in the first place. But I think just from the perspective of aligning, there's not many things in American soccer where we're working in the same direction. So if we're playing all at the same time, the same sport, I feel like that's positive. They'll just have to be clever with the scheduling, which MLS isn't always clever with the scheduling of things over history, but I think it could be done well.
Based on the story, there may be sort of a punt on the idea that you're going to do some comprehensive schedule. Like everybody is still going to be traveling all over the place to play everybody as much as you can. Based on what Tenorio wrote, there's at least a thought about divisions, right? And then the idea there, of course, is that you play most of your games in your division, and then whatever games you're not playing in your division, you play in your conference. So you kind of are splitting the country into quadrants, basically, and saying we can't do, we can't do like even a close to a balanced schedule. We can't have a lot of cross conference games because it's just logistically too much of a challenge. And if you are segregating teams based on geography, there is that question of, okay, how does that work in terms of when it's cold in some places, when it's not? I also think that what's notable about this is that this is clearly driven by the TVH, right? That the only way to look at this is Major League Soccer is finally doing a calculation. No, it's about lining up transfer windows, right? That's mentioned in the story. It's something we've always talked about. It's a problem for Major League Soccer, not just in selling players, because who wants to sell their best player in the middle of their season when it's summer in Europe and they want to buy talent for a new campaign? It's also about getting players in during the summer. Mentioned in the story is that Major League Soccer's transfer window closes too early. Like whether you think that the league needs to change the calendar or not, at the very least, the summer window closes too early and players are waiting out European options before they make a decision about MLS. MLS's window closes, they miss out on those players, right? So if you want to compete for that kind of level, you want to level up your entire roster across the league, you need to do something about that. But this to me smacks of our money's coming from television down the line. We're looking at Apple or whoever the partners are to be the major driver of revenue for our league. Because if you are choosing to take games out of spring and summer and move them into colder windows, you're basically saying it doesn't matter to us as much to sell a lot of tickets and get people in the building. And for those fans who care about the league and watch mostly on television, this sounds great. Like, this is cool. Let's do this. My Saturday, it will be in the fall and the winter will be English football and MLS. I won't have to worry about, games being rained out or thunderstorms. How many games do we have delayed by thunderstorms this year? I mean, it felt like a lot. I don't know that that's the major driver of concern here. But again, this seems to be more about a television product than it is about the in-person experience. And some people are going to be mad about that, Robert. Some people are going to be upset. Besties have said in our Slack, on our Patreon, go join the Patreon, I'm not going to go to games or I'm not going to watch the league as much anymore. I got other stuff I care about in the fall and the winter.
Ooh, that's quite a harsh indictment there of the league in general. If it's not convenient, they kind of move on from it. I mean, that's a little bit interesting note all in its own right. It definitely will change viewing habits. I mean, historically, my watching of MLS is late night evenings in the summer. I would watch the MLS After Dark games in the evening and through the summer. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to see. But what is the major driver behind most things? If you're going to move a mountain, it's mostly for money, I would say, is not a big portion of why you'd move a mountain. And who's moving the mountain of money with MLS right now? It's
right. They're not doing this unless they think it benefits the bottom line, right? Which is, by the way, the other, you mentioned the list of things, right? These are the things that we battle about and argue about and debate in American soccer, and the schedule change, pro rel. This is what I've always said about promotion or relegation. It will happen when the people who write the checks, who foot the bill, who spend the money, who are invested in the league, decide it's better for their bottom line. And that's not like, oh, they're greedy, evil bastards kind of stuff. It's, of course, in the modern era, like, okay, McElhenney and Reynolds didn't buy Wrexham and do everything they did because they liked the feeling. They did it because it's going to make them money. Even if the feeling is also part of the story, even if the good vibes and saving the town and, oh, Rob McElhenney's blue collar, just like them, even if that's part of the story, it's bottom line stuff. And you can't really ask people who spend money like that to willingly choose to give up money because we think it's the right thing to do. Like that's a bridge too far, even if maybe it's the right thing for the game. this is one of those things where if the money speaks and money tells you do it, they're going to do it. And I think it's interesting. Nelson Rodriguez is quoted throughout because it means one of two things. And I haven't talked to Paul Tenorio. I don't know if he's talked about this or tweeted about this. It means Tenorio picked up the story, asked the league, and they provided Rodriguez, which means they're trying to get out in front of it, right? They're not just letting it be Paul Tenorio reporting, sources tell me the league is considering this without having their voice in the story. Or the league is the one who's pushing this through Nelson Rodriguez, through Paul Tenorio, that they're the ones who kind of, I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong about this. Paul Tenorio gets a story that he's tipped off about from the league. Of course, he's going to publish it, and Nelson Rodriguez is all over it. So I ask you, Robert, do you think this is the league floating the story to gauge the response, to add that to the data that they use to make the decision? Or is this the league kind of putting this out there because it's definitely coming and they want to see what the response is?
That's an interesting question, Jason. And I thought that myself. Who benefits from this kind of being thrown out into the ether now that this is even a vague possibility? Who benefits or who might be most interested? I would think that maybe the story was going to come out anyway, and they wanted to be able to put their spin on it.
That's the first scenario in which Paul Tenorio, a very good reporter, gets his hands on a story, says to Major League Soccer, as a good journalist would do, do you have a comment on this? And they go, yeah, Nelson Rodriguez is going to tell you all about it without actually committing to anything. Right.
Yeah.
And it leaves it up to us as MLS fans and observers and American soccer fans to ponder whether this is, and look, you could also, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, but you could also argue this is like wagging the dog on some level. Major League Soccer.
Yeah. The wagging the dog is like, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Flood the zone with something that gets people excited, I guess. But I don't even know if this is a popular enough idea, right? I do think this is maybe subtly setting the tone and trying to get it into the heads of people who care very much about MLS. You may have to change your habits, because that's a major thing to ask people who have been going to MLS games through the spring and summer and into the fall for the last 29 years or whatever we're at now, 20, whatever, I can't do math, to suddenly change and be willing to go in November and December. Right.
Long summer nights of going out to the park. If the families, for the people that are dedicated season ticket holders and all that stuff, their family tradition was going to games through the summer. That's a whole different thing. Now we talk about teams moving and breaking up traditions and memories, and this is adjacent to that. And I did want USSF to make significant change following the 2026 World Cup. I was hoping, 2018, 2019, I was hoping that there would be a pro rel plan or something like that set for after 2026, but calendar change, I guess.
A pro rel plan might happen again when the money says it should happen, but also when MLS, because they're the only ones that can pull it off, owns the second division. So if you want MLS to buy the USL, that's how we get to pro rel. That's the only path I can see. Because MLS is not going to willingly partner up with a competing competition to have its teams move back and forth. Legally, that's a very messy thing.
Yeah, but you give it like a 10-year runway for litigation. Anything's possible, right?
You got to have a litigation runway. If there's anything I know about American soccer, it's that you got to have a litigation runway.
Is the antitrust lawsuit still a thing? I mean, that's
yes,
about
it is.
In.
It is still a thing. It's still going on. The NASL is still suing U.S. soccer. MLS will have to compete with college football if they switch up the schedule. That's from our girl Morgan. Thank you very much, Morgan, for being around. As always, appreciate.
Morgan has done it.
Look, obviously that's true. That's true that MLS would have to compete with college football and the NFL, right? Whatever, if they want to play games on Sunday or they just want to get attention. But I'm of the opinion, Robert, that it's time to stop with this idea that you're going to, try to dodge the big operations, like the big products in the room, for lack of a better word, right? The properties like the NFL, like college football, the ones that are eating up all the oxygen or sucking up all the oxygen during that part of the year. You kind of have to say, we can stand on our own 2 feet. We may lose some people, but maybe we gain some people who aren't football fans, right? Who who, for whatever reason, are on the European calendar with their minds about soccer, maybe they're more likely. I mean, again, these are all calculations you have to make when you do this stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the TV numbers. So if this season would hypothetically end in like May, June,
Yes.
so they would be competing with like hockey, basketball playoffs and finals, sort of. So the important part of the MLS season, as it is, bleeds into football. But now the business end of MLS would bleed into basketball, hockey. Which one? Maybe with the data, I'm sure they're crunching numbers and making those sort of equations if they're even getting that far in the process. But maybe they're willing to take that gamble that less heads are turned away from MLS during the springtime if they truly want the playoffs in the final to be like the pinnacle of their product.
I mean, I think they do. I think it does make sense. Right now the playoffs are going to start, and Morgan's saying competing with college football. You're competing with college football. You're competing with the NFL. You're competing with the beginning of the NBA season, right? Those things are all happening right now. So there's really no good spot on the calendar where like, oh, we have a whole lot of space to ourselves. I would rather it be June when you might have the basketball playoffs and the NBA to deal with, and the beginnings basically of Major League Baseball when everybody's like, oh yeah, I don't even know who's good yet, rather than where you are right now in the fall, and potentially to have bad weather finals, right? I mean, Columbus is really the only team in the top 4 where you might have a little bit of a problem with weather in a final. But let's say somebody, if Minnesota makes a run in the West, I don't think that's possible if they beat out anybody in the East. But there are teams where it could be ugly. So anyway, all right, that's it. I think we're done. It's an incredible Best Soccer Show with Robert Kerr sitting in. Let me do some promotion. First of all, join the Patreon for the Best Soccer Show, the Best Soccer Show. You can get some bonus stuff. You can be part of the Besties community, which is always awesome. Patreon.com/the Best Soccer Show is where you go and do that. You can also please like and subscribe this channel, this video, everything we're doing at the Best Soccer Show. But of course, Robert's not the normal host on the Best Soccer Show. He is my co-host on Morning Kick Around. Go check out Morning Kick Around. It's got its own YouTube channel, got its own place to interact with us. Subscribe to Morning Kick Around. I don't know if we got beyond our 300 goal during our show tonight.
So one of our listeners here today became the lucky number 300.
Okay, we're just at 300. Hey, if we got one subscriber out of this, it was totally worth it, is what I'm thinking. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, live. Shows are obviously going to be available to watch after the fact, and we cut the show up so you can watch individual segments and topics and things like that. What am I missing?
We've learned that we've really learned that Messi is a driver of views. We've really learned
shockingly, we have found out that Lionel Messi brings some heat when you post a video on YouTube. Like, shockingly, we had no idea how powerful Lionel Messi's name was. But when you post a video about him maybe winning the MVP with a hat-trick performance against a pretty bad Revolution team, lots of people will watch your video. So that's good. Like, if you want to go be like the 12,000th person to watch that video, you can do that. I'd prefer the subscribe though. Like, hit the sub button. That would be better for us.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
It was great to join you on your program. I'm a long-time listener, never a time caller, but I really appreciate it. I really got hyped there at the music at the beginning. That was quite the experience. Thank you for having me on and joining you.
Your internet conspired to nearly prevent you from doing this show, but you soldiered through. Good job, internet. Good job, Robert's internet.
Yeah, I think there's more people in the house at 9:30 at night than there is at 9:30 in the morning.
You got to pay for that gigabit. That's what I do. All right, we're out of here. Thank you very much for watching this episode of the Best Soccer Show. We will see you soon.
WNBC. WNBC. Oh, it's incredible!
The Sausage King of Chicago.
Can I get a manager? Can I please get a manager?
We are at DEFCON 1.
DEFCON 1. Get to the chopper!
Morgan has done it!
Who asked those questions?
Duh and or hello.
Michael fucking Oscar Pascal.
Is that JTT?
OMFPG-13, it's JTT!
Who?
Jay Rodius.